Everybody, this is my cousin Tessa, the family's biggest disappointment. She couldn't even finish college. But we love her anyway, right? Adrienne said it with a champagne flute in one hand and her fiancé's arm in the other, and the whole patio laughed. 40-something people in summer linens, laughing at me like it was part of the toast. But 10 minutes later, when her fiancé's mother crossed that patio, took my hand in both of hers, and said what she said loud enough for every single one of those people to hear. Adrienne's glass wasn't raised anymore. It was shaking. Let me tell you how we got there. My name is Tessa Varnell. I grew up in Paducah, Kentucky, a river town at the confluence of the Tennessee and the Ohio, the kind of place where people know your grandmother's maiden name and still hold opinions about things your parents did in high school. My father, Louis, was a pipe fitter at the Honeywell plant in Metropolis, just across the river in Illinois. My mother, Dina, worked the front desk at the Quality Inn off Exit 4 for 22 years. We weren't poor. We had a house, a working truck, food that was hot, but we were the kind of family that other Varnells looked past at reunions. Because the other Varnells had done well. My Uncle Martin, my father's older brother, had started a chain of farm supply stores across western Kentucky in the 90s. Varnell Agricultural Supply. 5 locations by the time I was a teenager. Martin drove a black Suburban, lived in a big colonial out on Friendship Road, and had season tickets to the Wildcats. His wife, Patricia, had been Miss McCracken County in 1989 and never quite recovered from the belief that this made her royalty. And their daughter, Adrienne, was the crown jewel of the family's self-mythology. Cheerleader, homecoming queen, University of Kentucky sorority girl, pharmaceutical sales job right out of graduation. Adrienne had one of those lives that looked perfect from every angle because she spent extraordinary energy making sure you only saw the angles she'd chosen. I was the contrast they needed. Every family that builds a pedestal needs someone to put beneath it, and I was convenient. Here's the truth about why I didn't finish college. I completed 3 semesters at Murray State before my mother had her first stroke. She was 47. I came home on a Friday, found her on the kitchen floor with the phone still in her hand. She'd been trying to call me, and I never went back. Not because I couldn't, because someone had to be there, and my father, God love him, could fix any pipe in the Ohio Valley, but couldn't navigate a hospital billing department or manage a medication schedule or argue with an insurance adjuster who was denying coverage for the 4th time. So I stayed. I was 19. Have you ever made a decision that you know is right, but that the world will punish you for anyway? Adrienne's version was simpler. Tessa dropped out. Tessa couldn't hack it. Tessa's working some little job. She told it so many times and so casually that it became family fact. One of those stories that gets repeated at every gathering until nobody questions it anymore, like the time Uncle Martin supposedly caught a 40-pound catfish at Kentucky Lake that everyone knows was closer to 12. What actually happened during those years, the ones Adrienne was narrating as my failure, was something different. After my mother's stroke, I became her primary caregiver. I learned to manage her physical therapy schedule, her speech therapy appointments, her blood thinners. I became fluent in the language of insurance codes and prior authorizations. And because our coverage was inadequate and the out-of-pocket costs were drowning us, I started looking for better options. That's how I found patient advocacy. It started small. A nurse at Baptist Health Paducah named Wanda Greathouse saw me fighting with a billing office over a $14,000 charge that should have been covered, and she said, "You're better at this than most of the professionals I've seen. Have you ever thought about doing this for real?" I hadn't, but I started. I took an online certification through the Patient Advocate Certification Board, studied at night while my mother slept, sitting at the same kitchen table where I'd found her on the floor. I earned my BCPA credential in 2018. I started taking clients, mostly elderly patients in the Purchase area who were getting buried by medical bills they didn't understand, or families navigating Medicare denials, or people whose insurance companies had decided that the cheapest treatment was the only treatment. I was good at it. Not because I was brilliant, because I was relentless. I understood what it felt like to be lost in a system that was designed to exhaust you into giving up. I knew exactly how it felt to sit in a hospital hallway at 2 in the morning wondering if anyone in the building actually cared whether your mother lived or died, or if she was just a billing code in a queue. By 2020, I'd formalized it. Varnell Patient Advocacy Services, operating out of a small office on Broadway in Paducah, 2 blocks from the old Coca-Cola mural. I had a part-time assistant named Keely who'd been a medical coder at Lourdes Hospital. We handled insurance disputes, billing audits, care coordination, and, increasingly, cases where patients were being denied experimental or specialized treatments by insurers who were banking on the family not knowing how to fight back. One of those cases, in early 2022, involved a 17-year-old boy from Mayfield, Kentucky, named Dylan Fournier. Dylan had been diagnosed with osteosarcoma, bone cancer, in his right femur. His oncologist at Vanderbilt had recommended a limb salvage surgery with a specific type of expandable prosthesis that would grow with him, followed by a targeted chemotherapy protocol. The procedure was expensive, north of $400,000, and his family's insurance carrier, a mid-tier regional plan, denied coverage on the grounds that a standard amputation was medically sufficient. Medically sufficient. A 17-year-old athlete, and they wanted to take his leg because it was cheaper. Dylan's mother, a woman named Lorraine Fournier, found me through a referral from a social worker at Vanderbilt. I took the case pro bono. Over the next 4 months, I filed 3 appeals, gathered supporting documentation from 6 specialists, submitted a complaint to the Kentucky Department of Insurance, and, when the insurer still wouldn't budge, I connected Lorraine with a healthcare attorney in Louisville who used my case file to threaten a bad faith lawsuit. The insurer reversed the denial 11 days before Dylan's surgical window would have closed. He kept his leg. He went back to school that fall. His mother sent me a photo of him at homecoming, standing, dancing, both feet on the gymnasium floor, with a note that said, "Asterisk, you gave my son his life back. I will never forget your name, asterisk." I framed that photo. It sits on my desk next to my mother's old prescription bottles, which I keep because they remind me why I started. Now, Adrienne's engagement party. It was June 2023. She was marrying a man named Weston Ashford, tall, polished, from a family in Bowling Green that owned a regional logistics company, Ashford Freight Solutions. The kind of family that had a coat of arms on their stationery that everyone knew was invented by a graphic designer in 2014, but nobody mentioned. The party was at Uncle Martin's place on Friendship Road. Catered. String lights in the backyard. A raw bar that Patricia kept mentioning was flown in from the Gulf Coast this morning, as if the shrimp had traveled first class. I almost didn't go. My mother's health had been stable. Her second stroke in 2021 had set her back, but she was managing with a home health aide 3 days a week, and she insisted I attend. "You're a Varnell whether they act like it or not," she said. "Go. Wear the blue dress." I wore the blue dress. The first hour was fine. I stayed on the periphery, talked to my father near the barbecue pit, caught up with a second cousin named Boyd, who'd just started driving for UPS, and was the only person in the family who ever asked how my mother was doing. I ate a crab cake. I drank a glass of white wine that tasted expensive and sad. Then Adrienne found me. She was making rounds, the gracious hostess, touching everyone's arm, laughing at everything, performing the version of herself she'd been rehearsing since high school. When she reached me, she put her arm around my shoulder and turned to the cluster of people nearby. Weston's college friends, a few of Patricia's garden club women, and crucially Weston's parents, Gerald and Lorraine Ashford, who were standing about 8 feet away. "Everybody, this is my cousin Tessa, the family's biggest disappointment. She couldn't even finish college." She squeezed my shoulder. "But we love her anyway, right?" Laughter. Not cruel laughter. Worse. Polite laughter. The kind that tells you everyone in the group has already accepted the premise, and your role is to smile and confirm it. I felt my face go hot. I felt the wine turn sour in my stomach. I felt 19 again, on the kitchen floor, holding my mother's hand, choosing to stay. But I didn't say anything. Not because I was weak. Because I'd learned that the most powerful thing you can do in a room full of people who've already decided who you are is to wait. What happened next took about 45 seconds, and it changed everything. Weston's mother, Lorraine Ashford, had been standing with her husband near the bar. When Adrienne made her introduction, I saw Lorraine's head turn. Not toward Adrienne. Toward me. And I watched something move across her face, recognition, confusion, then something that looked like a dam breaking behind her eyes. She set down her drink. She walked across the patio. She walked past Adrienne without looking at her. And she took both of my hands in hers. "You're Tessa Varnell," she said. Not a question. "Yes, ma'am. You're the woman who saved my nephew's leg." Every single person on that patio stopped talking. Have you ever been in a moment where the silence isn't empty, it's full? Full of every assumption crashing into every truth at the same time? Lorraine Ashford, née Lorraine Fournier before she married Gerald in 1991, was Dylan Fournier's aunt, his mother's sister. She'd been at Vanderbilt during the surgery. She'd seen my name on every document, every appeal, every filing that kept her nephew whole. This woman, Lorraine said, turning to face the patio, to face Adrienne, who was still standing there with her arm frozen in midair, spent 4 months fighting an insurance company that wanted to amputate a 17-year-old boy's leg to save money. She didn't charge his family a cent. She worked nights. She filed appeals that attorneys told us would never succeed. And because of her, my nephew Dylan walked at his homecoming last October. She turned back to me. Her eyes were wet. You are not a disappointment. You are the reason my family is whole. Gerald Ashford stepped forward, shook my hand, and said quietly, "We tried to find you afterward. Dylan's mother said you wouldn't take payment." "I didn't do it for payment," I said. Adrienne's voice cut in, too loud, too bright. "Well, I didn't know about all that. Tessa's always been so quiet about." "You didn't know," Lorraine said, looking at Adrienne with a politeness so thin it was transparent, "because you never asked." The rest of the party continued, technically. Music played. People ate shrimp. But something had shifted in the geometry of the evening. Adrienne was no longer the center, and she knew it. I watched her spend the rest of the night trying to recapture the room, laughing louder, toasting more often, pulling Weston close for photos. But people kept drifting toward me. Weston's college friends wanted to know about patient advocacy. Patricia's Garden Club women, 2 of whom were over 70 and deep in their own insurance nightmares, asked for my card. Gus, a retired pharmacist from Bowling Green who'd come with the Ashfords, sat with me for 20 minutes asking about Medicare Part D appeals and scribbling notes on a cocktail napkin. Uncle Martin found me near the end of the night by the barbecue pit. He looked uncomfortable, shifting his weight, holding his bourbon with both hands. "Tessa, I owe you an apology. Patricia and we've let Adrienne set the narrative about you for a long time. That's on us." "Yes, it is," I said. "Not mean. Just true." He nodded. "Your daddy's proud of you. He doesn't say it enough, but he is. And your mama. I should have been there more when Dina got sick. That's on me too." "Yes," I said again. "It is." He deserved that honesty, and I think in that moment he was big enough to take it. There's something I've thought about a lot since that night. Adrienne didn't call me a disappointment because she believed it. She called me a disappointment because she needed it to be true. Her entire identity was built on comparison. She was successful because someone else wasn't. She was beautiful because someone else wasn't. She was worthy because someone else wasn't. Take away the contrast, and she's just a woman in an expensive dress at a party, hoping someone notices. I don't hate Adrienne. I feel something worse. I understand her. I understand that her cruelty wasn't strength. It was architecture. She'd built her whole self-image on a foundation that required me to be beneath her, and when Lorraine Ashford walked across that patio, the foundation cracked. Weston and Adrienne got married that September. I wasn't invited to the wedding. That's fine. Lorraine Ashford called me personally to apologize for it, which tells you everything you need to know about which side of that family has character. I'm still in Paducah. My office on Broadway has grown. Keely's full-time now, and I brought on a second advocate named Devora, who specializes in mental health coverage denials. We handled 147 cases last year. Our success rate on insurance appeals is 78%, which is roughly triple the national average for unrepresented patients. I'm not rich. Patient advocacy isn't where you go to get rich. But I am solvent, and I am necessary, and I sleep well, which is more than a lot of people with corner offices and perfect resumes can say. My mother is still with us. She's slower now, uses a walker, gets tired by 3 in the afternoon. But every morning, she sits at the kitchen table with her coffee, and sometimes she looks at me and says, "You stayed." Not a question. A fact. The most important fact of my life. Dylan Fournier, by the way, is a freshman at Western Kentucky University this year. Pre-med. He wants to be an orthopedic surgeon. He sent me a text on my birthday that said, "Asterisk still standing. Both feet. Because of you, asterisk." I keep that text the way my mother keeps her coffee, close, warm, first thing in the morning. And that label Adrienne gave me, the family's biggest disappointment, I've thought about it. I've turned it over. And I've decided she was right, actually. I am a disappointment to every system, every institution, and every person who ever bet on me staying small. I disappoint them daily. Professionally. Thoroughly. With documentation. And I have no plans to stop. Asterisk if this story made you feel something, subscribe, and turn on notifications. Because the next one will stop you in your tracks. I'll see you there, asterisk.